Throughout the Second World War, there were many executions that took place inside of countries that fell under the control of Nazi Germany. Hungary was a country which became linked to the Nazis and Hitler and was part of the Axis alliance, with Hungarian forces fighting alongside the Wehrmacht in many different theatres of the conflict, including in the brutality of the Eastern Front. The country would also deport thousands of their people to concentration camps, where they were killed within minutes of entering camps such as Auschwitz. But one man who was considered very powerful inside of Hungary was Bela Imredy, who became the Prime Minister before the Second World War broke out. He was a right-wing politician, but his time in power was short-lived, as he was forced out by fascists. However, he did make laws which made the lives of many people a complete misery. But he was executed after the conflict had come to an end, and his execution was performed in public in front of a huge crowd. Join us today as we look at the execution of the Prime Minister of Hungary, and remember as always to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. Bela Imredy was born on the 29th of December 1891 inside of Budapest, which at the time was within Austria-Hungary. He was born into a Catholic family, and Imredy had a normal upbringing, before he then went on to study law, before he took a job in the Hungarian Ministry of Finance. He rose throughout the economic ranks, and he became the director of the Hungarian National Bank in 1928. Then in 1932 he was made the Minister of Finance, serving under the Prime Minister at the time, Gyula Gombos. Following resigning 3 years later, Imredy then became the President of the National Bank, and he was at the heart of the economics of the country yet again. But he was a very ambitious man, and he was a man who was known for being right-wing, and he was also pro-Britain. He then became the Minister of Economic Coordination under a new Prime Minister. However, following yet another resignation, he was himself appointed by Regent Miklos Horthy, the Prime Minister. Bela Imredy would try to improve the diplomatic relations that Hungary had with the British, to try and link the two countries through trade and other routes. However, this made him not very popular with Nazi Germany and also Fascist Italy. Hitler and Mussolini were not very impressed with Bela Imredy, and he realised that he could not alienate these two dictators and their powers for long, as he believed that Hungary would need them economically. He then switched his policies and ideas, and he became more pro-German and pro-Italian. But he wanted to establish right-wing politics in the Hungarian government, and he created the movement of Hungarian life. He would try and stamp out any rivals who threatened his policies, including wiping out the power of prominent fascists, and these were pressured by Imredy's government. But as he moved his government further towards the right and the ideas of Nazi Germany and Mussolini's Italy, he wanted his government to become more totalitarian, and he brought in laws that brought in the restriction of the freedom of the press. He also brought in laws which were anti-Semitic and caused the Jews across Hungary to have financial restrictions applied on them, and many became very poor because of this. However, inside of Hungary, many of his political opponents became very angry towards him, as they believed he was leading the country too much to become like Germany and Italy, and they got together and presented evidence to the regent regarding Imredy's heritage. They showed that his great-grandfather was Jewish, and with this he was accused of double standards and hypocrisy. The regent then confronted Imredy about this, and he did not deny this, and because of his heritage he was forced out of office, and on the 13th of February 1939 he resigned his position as Prime Minister. Following the outbreak of the Second World War, he then served briefly in the Hungarian army, before he would go back to politics, founding an anti-Semitic fascist party known as the Party of Hungarian Renewal. However, he tried to promote the cause for years, but in 1944 the Germans occupied Hungary, and it was believed that Imredy, with his pro-Nazi beliefs and policies, would make a miraculous comeback into politics at the highest level. He was a top choice of high-ranking Nazis to replace the Prime Minister. However, the regent could not accept this idea, and another man was named Prime Minister instead. But Imredy would come back to government, and he was now the Minister of Economic Coordination, but after a few months he resigned. Following the ousting of the German forces from Hungary, Imredy was then arrested by his people and was brought to trial. He was brought in front of the People's Tribunal in Budapest on the 14th of November 1943. Within 9 days he had been sentenced to death. He was charged with enacting the anti-Jewish legislation across Hungary that caused mass suffering and hardship, as well as being in collaboration with Hitler, Mussolini and the Nazis. For these crimes he was sentenced to death, and he was to be executed inside of Budapest. He was brought outside the Academy of Music in Budapest on the 28th of February 1946, and the 54-year-old was led towards an execution site which had been created. He was stood by a set of sandbags, which were there to make sure that any bullets did not ricochet off anywhere. Stood opposite him were a number of executioners who were primed with their rifles. The witnesses and many policemen were stood to the side, and when the order was given to fire, the executioners shot straight into Bela Imredy, the former Prime Minister of Hungary. Bela Imredy was a politician who became the Prime Minister of Hungary just before the Second World War broke out. He was one of a number of prime ministers during the turbulent years inside of the country, and he was a man who wanted to move the land closer to the Nazis and the Italians, as it's believed he was fearful of Hitler and Mussolini. He began his career in politics pro-British, however it's clear he was easily manipulated, as he quickly changed his ideas as Hitler was not impressed. He would meet his end at the sharp end of a firing squad, and because of his crimes and laws against Jews and other people, he was sentenced to death. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.